Hi, welcome to the Little Gardens Homestyle text class of A Course in Miracles. Grab your book and read along with us.
So good morning, Jan. What are we doing today?
Hi,
Hi.
Hi, everybody. We're doing, oops, I'm on the wrong page. We're doing Chapter 8, Section 8 in A Course in Miracles, and it's the body as means or end. So last week we did the body as a means of communication, and maybe I could just repeat what that is very, very succinctly as an introduction to this. What it was saying is that if we think of our body as the thing that we are and the limit of what we are, we're limiting our minds.
Yeah.
And if we think of the body as a communication instrument, then mind goes to mind. Then Holy Spirit here sees Holy Spirit there.
Yeah.
So then mind is unlimited. So that's a good basis for what we're going to read today.
And the other thing I would point out is right at the beginning of this chapter, he was saying a meaningful curriculum, in other words, what we're learning, cannot be inconsistent if it's planned by two teachers, meaning the ego or the Holy Spirit, each believing in diametrically opposed ideas. It cannot be integrated. So that's the idea. The ego is trying to teach us who we are, and so is the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. And the ego is fighting the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit doesn't fight back.
Right. So the body as a means, and for the ego, the body is an end in itself. If it gets these circumstances with this situation, then good. I'm good.
Right. Yeah.
But it's a means towards the end of the Holy Spirit's teaching.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Let's start with Laura. Laura, could you read paragraph 1? By the way, it's a really long paragraph. If you want to just read the first 8 sentences,
okay,
let's stop there.
Okay.
Okay.
The body as means or end. Attitudes towards the body are attitudes towards attack. The ego's definitions of anything are childish and are always based on what it believes the thing is for. This is because it is incapable of true generalizations and equates what it sees with the function it ascribes to it. It does not equate it with what it is. To the ego, the body is to attack with. Equating you with the body, it teaches that you are to attack with. The body then is not the source of its own health. The body's condition lies solely in your interpretation of its function. I just want to go back to one. So in sentence 4, I think I'm losing, there's a lot of pronouns.
Okay.
So it does not equate it with what it is. The ego does not equate the body with what it is. Okay,
Yes.
good. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay.
Good, thank you.
Ego. And so it's like the ego is driving this big robot around to attack other bodies or something. I don't know. To conquer the world.
Yeah.
I just
like
like
that.
These sci-fi movies. I have all these sci-fi movies coming up in my mind, but I really think it's interesting too how he equates the ego with a child. And it just gives me again that impression of a 2-year-old having a tantrum because it can't get its way.
Yeah.
And 2-year-olds do change what they want quite often as well, don't they?
Yes.
So I mean, I'll leave it up for others to comment, but for me, it's I think it is pretty clear. Like the Holy Spirit, the body is a means of communication and salvation for the brothers, and the ego just sees it as a little toy soldier to attack with.
Yes, and it attacks attack and defense, don't forget that attack and defense are the same thing. So when I defend my body, I'm also attacking my body.
Right.
I'm forgetting that I am not a body. I'm forgetting what the body is for.
So the ego equates what it sees with the function, right? That's how it looks for what the ego it does. And that's how we judge what we see. Is that, it seems like that's the filter it goes through.
What can I get from my body? What can I get from your body?
Yeah, but, okay.
Yeah.
Is it 4?
Okay, let's have Eric read the next half of that paragraph. Unless there are other comments on it.
Functions are part of being since they arise from it, but the relationship is not reciprocal. So functions are part of being, but being isn't part of functions.
Or it doesn't completely define functions.
Yeah. The whole does define the part, but the part does not define the whole.
There you go.
Yet to know in part is to know entirely because of the fundamental difference between knowledge and perception. In perception, the whole is built up of parts that can separate and reassemble in different constellations. But knowledge never changes, so its constellation is permanent. The idea of part-whole relationships has meaning only at the level of perception, where change is possible. Otherwise, there's no difference between the part and the whole. So it's talking about the difference between knowledge and perception, isn't it?
Yeah, yes.
So we can perceive things as being made up of parts, and those parts form different assemblies, which can be different. But knowledge sees all parts as just part of one whole.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's a bit like it's talking about constellation there, isn't it? What's coming to mind is like fractals, where every little individual piece you look at is part of the whole. It's all one great big reflection of itself.
Yeah, that's good. And it's a lot like how the Course describes the Christ. What is the Christ? The Christ is the one self we all share. So in each one of us, so that's knowledge. The Course's technical definition of knowledge. What's in you is in what's in all of us, the Christ.
Let's look at paragraph or sentence 9, because that's a real key to get us a hold of what's practical here. So it says functions are part of being since they arise from it, but the relationship is not reciprocal. So from the ego standpoint, what it does and how it functions as a parent or as an employee or as doing all these things, or the things that it have, that defines what the ego is. But from the Course's standpoint, functions don't define ourself. Ourself is what determines our function.
Very good. Thank you for that.
That's the big turnaround, because then if I know that being is intact and it's not about the things that I'm doing or the things that I have, then I recognize from my being comes my function of forgiveness, not the other way around.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Thank you. That's great. Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that half paragraph? It gets easier from here. Dale, would you read 2, please?
Sure. The body exists in a world that seems to contain 2 voices fighting for its possession. Well, that's absolutely true statement. That's something I'm sure I know I personally, about every moment of the day, struggle with what I'm seeing or what I think I'm seeing to reinterpreting to know what the truth is. And to me, it's like anything else that you learn to do and master. Eventually, you have to do it over and over and over
Right.
until that reinterpretation of what you're seeing becomes automatic and you don't think about it.
Mhm.
But we do have a choice on how we do it. And we can make a different decision in the moment, not to listen to what
Right.
our perception is telling and translates that into a voice that tells us what we're going to do. We have a choice. In this
Absolutely.
perceived constellation, the body is seen as capable of shifting its allegiance from one to the other, making the concepts of both health and sickness meaningful. That's kind of meaningful to me. I've had some health problems the last couple of years that are fine. They're all taken care of. And they've been taken care of because of medical procedures mainly, I think. But during that time, when I was struggling with this stuff, I had to go through some processes of seeing myself differently and not seeing myself as a body.
Mm.
And although I've intellectually known that for a long time,
Yeah.
when confronted with it and really seeing it for what it is and changing the inner thoughts, the inner beliefs to understanding that I'm who I am as I look at you and Timothy, I've learned, or at least beginning to learn, to look and interpret not what I'm seeing, but to know who you are really.
Yeah.
As an expression of Christ or God, or however you want to say it.
Yeah.
And again, that's a transition and a training of the mind to me to do that. But again, it's a choice on how we do it. It takes discipline. It has taken me discipline not to give in to what is appearing before me and to know that's not the truth.
That that description of what you've been doing is a perfect illustration of this section.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Let's see, where was I? Regarding the body as an end, the ego has no real use for it because it is not an end. You must have noticed an outstanding characteristic of every end that the ego has accepted as its own. When you have achieved it, it has not satisfied you. That is why the ego is forced to shift ceaselessly from one goal to another, so that you will continue to hope it can yet offer you something. Yeah, that's really good, those last 4 sentences, because I have noticed that in my own life. Once I think but I guess what I've come to understand, that there's really one answer for everything. And that's to forgive what you're seeing and your sense of separation, regardless of what's appearing before you in any moment. Now, some things are harder to do that. Some things, because of our life experiences, our individual life experiences, are more difficult. But truly, the answer is the same for everything. And that's to forgive ourselves for being separate. If somebody's appearing for you that really just irritates you, to try and look past that and know that we're all one, that they're a creation of God, and we're one, and to forgive them as well. But it never ends on the myriad ways that ego shows up to throw us off track.
Yeah, right. Well, there is a hint that there is an end to the ego in this section. So far, we all seem to be plagued with it.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyone else have a comment on this paragraph?
Do you remember the book from the 70s, Psycho-Cybernetics,
Oh, yeah.
where it had this idea that by the time you reach a goal, it's already not going to satisfy.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then and that's why it's saying then the ego has another goal. So if I'm a tobacco farmer in wherever, North Carolina, and I realize that product is not, and so I train to be whatever, a new technician. And then I'm, well, when I get that, then I'll really be free and whatever.
Yeah.
But by the time we get there, if that was just coming from an ego goal, it's not going to satisfy.
Right,
It wasn't meant to satisfy.
right. Yeah, it's like, is the body the end? Is it the goal?
Right.
In other words, for goal is end.
Right.
Is that the purpose, to satisfy my body, my senses,
Right.
my money thing, whatever it is? Or is this, oh, maybe I thought tobacco was a good thing and I'm giving it, and then I say, oh no, now I have to become an organic farmer, but I'm giving it. And then the body is a means
There
to
you
an
go.
end. And it's
Sure.
like, I'm loving people through the body. And, it's just a conduit, whether it's tobacco or organic food, it's just a conduit for love.
Right.
Yeah,
But that really brings in this distinction. The body's not an end, it's a means towards
yeah,
the Holy Spirit's purpose.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Leanne, could you read 3 for us, please?
It has been particularly difficult to overcome the ego's belief in the body as an end because it is synonymous with the belief in attack as an end. The ego has a profound investment in sickness. If you are sick, how can you object to the ego's firm belief that you are not invulnerable? This is an appealing argument from the ego's point of view because it obscures the obvious attack that underlies the sickness. If you recognize this and also decided against attack, you could not give this false witness to the ego's stand. I don't really know exactly what that whole paragraph means, but based on what Timothy said earlier, I find it very challenging not to get to have expectations of yourself, but not have the expectations of it satisfying you any more than just accomplishing that task. Like, I think most of us, or me, you think that something magical is going to happen when you accomplish something. Even though I know that's not true, after all these years, I've learned that. But then you feel like, well, I should still be able to have some hope or some expectation of having some sort of feeling from this. And then it goes into like, well, but if you have that feeling, then someone's going to pull the rug out from underneath you,
Right.
because that's programming that we've received. So it's this vicious cycle of not ever allowing yourself just to feel without any expectations, which I have found extremely challenging, because then I feel like I'm just a numb, neutral individual that doesn't give a shit about anything. I'm either that or on this extreme, like finding that just that peace of God. I mean, I know I've sensed it,
Right.
but it's very, it doesn't stay very long. So then you're back in the ego world of expecting something from all these things that we accomplish. It's like when you buy a new car, how long are you really happy with it?
Yeah,
Right.
10 minutes.
The smell is good, yeah. You're like, and then you get the first car payment. You're like, oh my God. I mean, even when you spend all day preparing a meal, I mean, like, or especially if you're preparing a meal for someone else,
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
you got up early, you did all this extra stuff and no one really cared about it, or they didn't express their feelings good enough for you to be satisfied. I mean, it's like every moment of every day, we're just chasing our tail like a dog.
Right.
Right.
But there's a prayer in the first part of the workbook that says, ask with hope
Mhm.
and ask with yearning
Mhm.
for the accomplishments of what the Holy Spirit would have you accomplish.
Right.
Because that's where the ego is. It's like, I'm hoping, I'm yearning that this end that I see in the self,
Mhm.
like I want to be, I work as a singer and I want to do this song, I want to make it beautiful, and then I sing it, and like Leanne was saying, everybody goes, oh, that's nice. Like, like that. I wanted approval from that,
Yeah.
rather than saying, let me do this because I can express love. but
Right.
I should have hope and yearning for the outcomes that the Holy Spirit is expecting.
So that's the idea of, is it a means or an end? Is, is the self-concept, the ego, is that what I'm looking for?
Right.
Am I looking for my specialness? Is that what I'm doing with the body?
Right.
That's a goal that can never be achieved,
Yeah.
really. And, or is this making a meal or whatever it is, singing a song, is it flowing love from Holy Spirit in me to Holy Spirit in the other person? Then it is satisfying no matter what the response,
Because you're
Because-
already in love.
because it's a flow of love.
Yeah.
Right. And I think of, the idea of means or end, of channel, that whole idea, I think of it as like a pipeline. If I think of my body as like a pipeline for love from Holy Spirit in me to the truth in the other person, then whatever flows through, that's the point.
Yeah.
It's not the body, is not the point. The self-concept is not the point.
Right.
The approval, the money, the things, whatever.
So that's where, so the ego always gives to get something.
Right,
But if I'm in the love of forgiveness and salvation,
right,
then I'm giving the love that I already have.
right,
And it's the giving of that love that is the purpose, not
right.
what it can accomplish
That's
in the
right.
outside world.
That's right.
The extension of love itself is
Right.
the reward, not what,
Right.
outcome on the outside might be.
Right, right. So this is not an equation, but it is like a metaphor. It's like the ego has particles and the Holy Spirit has waves, and the wave never stops, right? It just flows.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, enough on that. Let's see, it would be Kathy.
It is hard to perceive sickness as a false witness because you do not realize that it's entirely out of keeping with what you want. So before in the previous paragraph, it said that to refute that you are not a body when you are sick is kind of hard because the ego tells you that, so that's an argument that's hard to refute when you're sick. So that's part of this.
Yeah.
This witness then appears to be innocent and trustworthy because you have not seriously cross-examined him. If you had, you would not consider sickness as such a strong witness on behalf of the ego's views. A more honest statement would be that those who want the ego are predisposed to defend it. Okay. Therefore, their choice of witnesses should be suspect from the beginning. The ego does not call upon witnesses who would disagree with its case, nor does the Holy Spirit. I have said that judgment is a function of the Holy Spirit, and one he is perfectly equipped to fulfill. The ego as a judge gives anything but an impartial judgment. When the ego calls on a witness, it has already made the witness an ally. Wow.
Can I
So-
give an example?
She wants to. say
Sure.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead first.
Well, okay, so I just had an echocardiogram this week, and I have in my ventricle, I have this delayed relaxation response, where your heart doesn't contract. I mean, it just doesn't relax properly. I think that's a character description as well as an anatomical description of what's going on. It's amazing how this stuff shows up, I mean, it truly is amazing. That was all I was gonna.
Yeah. An example of getting the witnesses as allies, you can see, I'll use an example of men. It's like they're talking to other men and they're going, God, my wife's a bitch. Oh God, she's just horrible. And the other guys are going, yeah, she's really a bitch. And we look for people to validate
Right.
our belief system.
Right.
But the Holy Spirit is calling on validation of other witnesses to the health.
Completely different.
Yeah,
Yeah, so the
Very
Holy Spirit would say, she's calling for love,
exactly.
right? Yeah. So, when you and I were studying this earlier, we thought about a lesson where it talks about how when we're sick, it's as if we've built a wall, a sick wall around our mind.
Mm.
And if you think about it, when you're sick, and it could be emotional sickness, it could be, anger or worry or anything, but physical sickness really shows it.
Yeah.
It's like the mind can hardly think of anything else.
I know.
It's like it's all about the body. It's all about, you have a headache, all you can think about is your head, right? And it's like, that is what the ego is trying to do. It's trying to make the body the whole point of your life.
Yeah.
And it'll do it through pleasure and it'll do it through pain. This here is talking about pain, sickness. The contrast is that the Holy Spirit uses the body only for communication. And that means not communication like, oh, you're such a jerk, but I see the truth in you from the truth in me.
Yeah.
Namaste. That is real communication. So what it's saying here is that when we're using the body that way, it can't be sick. The ego, it wants to attack and defend, and it does it through judgment. I make up an idea of how I want things to be. Things are not that way. I'm attacking them.
Okay.
They're attacking me, so I'm going to attack them.
So I totally agree with this idea that if you use the body as the way the Holy Spirit is, that sickness is impossible.
Yeah.
But isn't it also true that if I'm standing on the truth of who I am with the Holy Spirit, the body may still appear to be sick, but I'm not letting that define me?
You're not being sick with it. Yes. I just saw the most amazing video. This guy's name is RJ Spina, S-P-I-N-A. And it's a little video of a man who was permanently paralyzed, according to the doctor, and had like 6 serious life-threatening illnesses as a result of this one thing. And when he got out of surgery, he knew how to heal himself. And you see videos of within a couple of months, he's walking normally. And it's like he talks about this very thing, about knowing that the body was sick, but he's not sick. He's
So,
bigger, he's the mind.
so he's not using the body necessarily to heal the body. He's using
Right,
the mind to heal the mind.
He's
Okay.
sticking with the truth of the mind,
Right.
and therefore the body can be healed. Yep,
Because if you're not using the body for sickness, then it's just neutral. And,
Right.
and the Holy Spirit can use it.
right. Yep. So we're back to Laura, unless you have more comments. Okay, let's go to 5 with Laura.
Okay. It is still true that the body has no function of itself because it is not an end. The ego, however, establishes as an end because as such, its true function is obscured. This is the purpose of everything the ego does. Its sole aim is to lose sight of the function of everything. A sick body does not make any sense. It could not make sense because sickness is not what the body is for. Sickness is meaningful only if the 2 basic premises on which the ego's interpretation of the body rests are true. That the body is for attack and that you are a body. Without these premises, sickness is inconceivable. I think, Jen, you summed it up by discussing that particular video that you saw, and just that the body's only a reflection of the mind. It doesn't do anything of itself. So, you know, whether it's attack or whether it's illness or not believing in either of those things, it's like a shell game with the ego, just another distraction to kind of get you to feel that you are a body,
Right.
which the ego thinks is the end, but in reality with big R it's almost nothing. I mean, it's a mean of communications, but it's nothing of what we are.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think it was you, Laura, who earlier talked about the body being like our robot or like our game avatar, you know,
Yep.
and the whole game of the ego is to have us identify so much with this thing, this changeable thing, that we forget that we are unchangeable in the mind of God, have never lost God's love. You know, it's like being a happy, healthy child sitting on the couch playing the game that monsters are coming, you know, and being so completely identified with that video game that he forgets that he's wealthy, you know, he's got everything, he's safe. That's us when we identify with the body, when we think the body is what we are.
You know, that's where this definition, where the ego constantly remains suspicious of your motives.
Yeah,
And that when you start practicing love, it moves from suspiciousness to viciousness, and then sickness comes,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
It becomes vicious.
When it's vicious, yeah.
And then you accept sickness, because when you're, like you're saying, when you're feeling that sickness, it's awful hard to believe that love is true.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why, you know, in the teacher's manual, it talks about how one who is more sane can see the truth in the other person when someone is sick. That's what the function of a healer is to see the truth.
Yeah.
Okay. So the two basic premises on which the ego's interpretation of the body rests are that the body is for attack, and that means attack and defense, because defense is attack. And you are a body. Well, we're not going to buy that anymore.
Believing that I am a body, I don't believe that as much anymore, except like when I have pain or whatever, but the body is for attack. And you said a defense, and that's the only thing that I automatically will go to anymore and not realize what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I feel like I'm weeding it out, but it's like just saying it, I want to kind of bust my ego so it can't.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Good for you.
Well,
Good for you.
that's where your sense of humor comes in so beautifully, Kathy.
Okay, is it Eric's turn, I think, for paragraph 6?
Okay. Sickness is a way of demonstrating that you can be hurt. It is a witness to your frailty, your vulnerability, and your extreme need to depend on external guidance. The ego uses this as its best argument for your need for its guidance. It dictates endless prescriptions for avoiding catastrophic outcomes. Sorry, that's making me laugh, that.
I know, me too.
The Holy Spirit, perfectly aware of the same situation, does not bother to analyze it at all. If data are meaningless, there is no point in analyzing them. The function of truth is to collect information that is true. Any way you handle error results in nothing. The more complicated the results become, the harder it may be to recognize their nothingness. But it is not necessary to examine all possible outcomes to which premises give rise in order to judge them truly. Wow. Any way you handle error results in nothing. So we can spend lifetimes like sifting through data that's meaningless,
Yeah,
and it still means nothing.
yeah.
The Holy Spirit doesn't bother to analyze it at all. How much time can we save if we get led by the Holy Spirit? Because we're not
Yeah.
analyzing all this data that's constantly coming into us. We just don't need it.
Right. Yeah.
Endless prescriptions for avoiding catastrophic outcomes.
Isn't that what, you know?
That's just a description of the world, isn't it? Though
Yes.
it's like you've got to do this to avoid this outcome.
Yeah.
If we don't stop the world heating up by 2 degrees by the end of next century, then it's going to be what? It's just like, it's a perfect description. Endless prescriptions for avoiding catastrophic outcomes.
And then it
Yeah.
shifts all the time.
Yeah.
What we
And
thought
then
was-
next year it's going to be some other catastrophe we've got to avoid,
Yeah, exactly.
like not getting some disease or
It's
vaccine or something.
constantly problems come up because that's what the ego feeds on.
Yeah.
The more complicated the results become, the harder it may be to recognize their nothingness. So, you know, it's the more tangled we get in the situation. And the whole thing is to recognize if it's a sick situation, just cancel the whole thing. Don't go there. Go to the Holy Spirit, go to truth, go to peace.
So
Ask for another way of looking at this.
So let's look at those first two sentences, because that's where we can cut the ego off before it even gets going.
Okay.
So it's saying sickness is a way of demonstrating that you can be hurt. It's a witness to your frailty and your vulnerability. So the ego wants us to see ourselves as vulnerable
Yeah.
and frail,
Mhm.
because why? Because and it's the ego that's making us be sick. But then the ego says, I've got the solution for you.
Yeah.
Right? When it is the problem itself.
Yes, right.
Right. So if we look at ourselves and set aside our frailty and our vulnerability and say, no, I want to hear the Holy Spirit.
I want love. I want peace.
Right.
I want health.
Right.
Yeah.
That was the big lesson in chapter 6. I can neither be hurt nor can I hurt anybody else.
Right.
Which is a big,
Right.
for me, that's a big line in the sand right there. 'Cause
Yeah.
it does seem like I've hurt other people. It does seem, like that. But how do I get to that place where I don't want to believe that?
Well, do you want sickness? You want sickness of the emotions,
Yeah.
which is guilt, and every other upset of the emotions is a form of guilt
That's right.
or a form of fear.
Yeah.
So, sadness, depression, anger, all of that. So do you want that? You want those sick thoughts, sick worries, sick
Right. So if I
ways of
didn't,
thinking?
if I didn't feel guilty,
Mhm.
then the body can have the purpose of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
Because it's only when we feel guilty and that lack
Mhm.
that we're going to attack, and attack as a body to body.
And other parts of the course are telling us the reason we do that is because we're trying to get back our self-worth.
Yeah.
I want to be worthy. I want to be good. I want to be strong. I want to be a conqueror. I want to be on top of the situation, whatever, however you want to describe it.
Yeah.
It's like we're trying to fill a lack that doesn't even exist.
Okay.
And so we think we are being attacked and our attack is justified in return.
Yeah.
But to get back to chapter 6, it was all about, I'm not a body.
Yeah.
I am not a body. You are not bodies. We are the one emanation of God, the Son of God, the child of God, one self,
Yeah.
in many different aspects.
And I just-
but-
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Go ahead, Dale. Go ahead.
Lines 5 and 6 are something very meaningful to me. The Holy Spirit, perfectly aware of the same situation, does not bother to analyze it at all.
Right.
If data are meaningless, there is no point in analyzing them. And, to me, that's something I've been working on over the last year, particularly, is moving away from trying to analyze everything and get an answer. What I'm trying to do, and I don't do it well all the time, it's just, I don't understand this, just turned over to Holy Spirit and wait for an answer.
Yeah.
And try and get back to peace as quickly as possible.
Exactly.
Otherwise, I just delve into tormenting myself of why am I not good enough? Why don't I understand this? Everybody else gets it. I don't. I'm an idiot. I'm sick. Why am I, just pick one.
Yeah.
But
Right.
the simpler thing is to say, okay, Holy Spirit, this is yours.
Yeah.
Take it. I'm waiting for an answer and go about my business and get back to
Perfect.
peace as quickly as I can.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. We have a new meditation walk in our garden where the suggestion is you pick up a rock at the beginning and you use it as a symbol of your prayer. So your prayer could be, what you're worried about, what you're anxious about, what you don't know that you need to know, whatever it is. And when you get to the end, there's like a little altar there, so to speak. You put it down. You let it go.
Right.
And just doing that symbolically has been helpful to me.
Yeah. Yeah. As soon as we can, for me, I'll just speak for myself. I'm trying to make my life simpler, not more difficult.
Right.
And I find myself, I don't know why I do it. I guess it's because I'm in this body. I want to make everything difficult. I feel like I really don't. That's the thing. And all of us, we don't have to do that.
Yeah.
It can be very simple. Just Holy Spirit, here. And I'll wait for the answer that I need to know. Then I'll do what you instruct me and move on with our lives.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
They used to say in the non-dualist tradition, you have one, and it depends on where you put the zeros. If you put the zeros after the one, then there's many, many outcomes that are coming. If you put the zero before the one, there's just one situation.
And zero is what it's saying the ego is.
Right.
All right. Okay. Leanne, could you read 7, please?
Could you just mention sentence 3?
Please do.
The ego uses this sickness
Mhm.
as its best argument for your need for its guidance. So we could seek the other guidance from the spirit, couldn't we, when we're sick?
Yeah.
In fact, some of us do, don't we? Not even consciously, but when we get sick, we start to think, oh, what's this life about then? Why have I suddenly got really sick?
Yeah.
And we look inward to spirit rather than looking, how do I stop myself getting sick again and getting vulnerable? We can take a different stance and we can say, maybe life's not quite what I thought it was about, and there's a different perspective to it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Right on.
Very good. Okay. You ready, Leanne?
Laura, did you still want to say something on that on 6?
Oh, yeah, thanks. I was actually looking at the same sentences as Dale, but I was just going to, I guess, clarify my thought, which is that, so the Holy Spirit doesn't analyze anything because it's like lesson 70 and 79. Let me recognize it's one problem. I believe in separation. We don't need to analyze, why any blah, 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 blah.
Right.
It's just one solution, right? Is that
Perfect.
what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
And not only is it one problem, but it's one problem that's been healed already.
Yeah, that's true. The answer is right there underneath all our garbage.
That's it.
Yeah. The pony is underneath that pile of manure. Remember that story.
A learning device is not a teacher. It cannot tell you how you feel. You do not know how you feel because you have accepted the ego's confusion, and you therefore believe that a learning device can tell you how you feel. Sickness is merely another example of this your insistence on asking guidance of a teacher who does not know the answer. The ego is incapable of knowing how you feel. When I said that the ego does not know anything, I said that the one thing about the ego that is wholly true, but there is one corollary. If only knowledge has being and the ego has no knowledge, then the ego has no being. Wow. Number 5, the ego is incapable of knowing how you feel. It sure makes us want to think it knows how we feel. I think that's its sole purpose, is to tell us how we feel and tell us how we should react to that feeling based on our screwed up perceptions of it's coming from ego.
Absolutely.
So that's a pretty big sentence to swallow, that it's incapable of knowing how you feel, because that's how we've all lived our lives.
Yeah, there's more to that whole idea here. I thought about that a lot, because in chapter 4, section 4, it says the one right use of judgment is, how do you feel?
Right.
But it's asking us not to think of the body or the ego as the authority or as having the right information. It's the one right use of judgment is to say, do you like how you feel? If you don't, turn to Holy Spirit. Don't go into a whole lot of analysis about how you feel, why you feel that way, who did this to whom, blah, blah, blah. Just, do you like how you feel? And if you don't, then you're thinking with the ego. Turn to the Holy Spirit.
That's why I've always been confused about intense like therapy sessions. Let's go back to your childhood and see what your mother or father said to you, or something that happened to you. And let's analyze. I mean, people spend 15, 20 years in therapy and don't get any better.
I know.
Because they're just rehashing everything that's ever happened to them.
Right.
And again, but then there's me, who I just really try to be in the moment and not go back into those things. But that's contrary to how most people live.
Absolutely.
People are always trying to tell you, well, Leanne, shouldn't you be mad about this? Shouldn't you be, happy about this? Or I'm like, well, I mean, what purpose does that serve?
Exactly.
So I try to practice it and then try to help others see the world just a little bit differently as well, so they can have a little more peace in their life.
Right.
Absolutely.
And because, like we've all said through this chapter, if we're constantly analyzing things, there's no peace in analyzing.
Right.
Zero. I mean, because you can, I had to make a pretty big decision in my life recently, and after the fact, you're always like, or when you're having a difficult conversation with someone, you're like, oh, I wish I would have said this. Or in an interview, you're like, I could have done this better. I should have wore this shirt, or I da. That's the past. We can't do anything about it anyways.
Right.
And that's just the ego again, trying to trap it in its game of we're not good enough, that you can't have peace because I don't want you to have peace. And so you just throw it all at the curb and go, Holy Spirit, I'm here for you.
Right on.
Perfect. Yeah.
The corollary that the ego does not exist, the correlate to that, and what makes the course a challenge is it's saying guilt and fear actually does not exist in your mind now. And what you seem to be experiencing is you're just recalling that memory way back when you thought, I want to separate from love. That's the only thing that's going on, because the Course is saying the Holy Spirit removed all that. Right at the moment that we thought we were separating for love, the Holy Spirit gave us the answer of forgiveness, of atonement. And so guilt and fear isn't in the mind, which is a big thing to accept.
Well, it is. I mean, I think that comes from outside our thought system.
Right. But the pragmatic example of guilt and fear do not exist in your mind is the holy instant. If you come into the present and you accept the forgiveness that's already there, the fear and the guilt is gone.
Yeah, and we can make another choice
Yeah.
there. Yeah. Any other thoughts on that one? So the whole idea that the body is not the teacher, the body is not an authority, it doesn't have power over us, is we have to be careful when we start mixing up different traditions. For example, the idea that body, mind, and spirit are equal it's not the Course. The Course is saying your body is in your mind. Your mind is not in your body. Your mind is eternal. Your body is obviously not.
Right.
So they're not equal. And we kind of get caught up in these things, you know, it's like even advertising for cosmetics. They'll use that idea that the body and the mind and the spirit are equal, and you'll never get out of it.
You know, it's another example of take like Zen Buddhism and its practice of meditation. It articulates very carefully that the problem is desire. That's what's causing all suffering, is your desire. But in the Course and the path of love, it doesn't address our desires for worldliness. It just says increase your desire, but put it towards what actually
Shift
will
the-
work.
Shift the angle,
So
shift,
we're not
shift the end.
we're not fighting against our wanting system, which is
Right.
the whole key.
Right.
Like those are the questions. What do I want?
Mhm.
And what is it for?
Yeah.
So we don't want to, like, we want to accept the strength of our wanting, not the negative aspects of it.
That's just what this is saying. Is the body a means or an end? If we want things for the body, that's where it's really going to be painful. If we want to use the body for love, for giving, for joining,
Yeah.
for communication, then the body is a joyful instrument.
Right. So you're not giving to get. The giving of it itself is the purpose of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is, whose turn is it? Is it Eric's turn?
It's mine, I think.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see here. Where are we?
8.
8, okay. You might well ask how the voice of something that does not exist can be so insistent. Yes, I have asked that. And have you thought about the distorting power of something you want, even if it is not real? Yes, there are many instances of how what you want distorts perception. Well, that's really a true statement, because most of the time in my life, when I've thought I really wanted something and I focused energy, I found that I really didn't want it.
Yeah.
Once I got there, that it wasn't real, that there really wasn't any substance to it, which brings up another point, just as you were finishing talking. We all hold on to this body or try to so desperately, and there's an expiration date on it for all of us.
Right.
And that has led me, particularly over the last few years with a few health challenges, to really examine and to go inward, to understand that we're not our bodies. Because if I hold on to that hope, I fall into a deep depression that is the answer. It creates all sorts of problems. And this first sentences here kind of go back to that very idea of our perception. Now, the perception that our body is our life, it is not. And it creates so many problems for all of us.
Yeah.
No one can doubt the ego's skill in building up false cases. Nor can anyone doubt your willingness to listen until you choose not to accept anything except truth. Yeah, I think that's just what I was trying to say, that said it better. When you lay the ego aside, it will be gone. And again, that goes back to me, that last sentence, to not analyzing everything. In my life experience, most of the time when I try and analyze anything, it really doesn't matter. You know, it's going to resolve itself one way. So why make myself miserable? And the opposite of that is when I've done what we're talking about, I find that the problem still is there, it's still appearing, but it starts to resolve itself seamlessly without all the analysis and without all the effort and all the anguish. So this whole thing to me, this whole section is just about retraining our minds to understand what we aren't and who we really are. And I think another part of that, and I've noticed this in my own quiet times when I'm it's just not me. When I'm saying I am a creation of God, I found myself, no, wait a minute, it's just not me. Jan is, Timothy is, all of you here are that same. We're all joined by that. And it sounds like maybe a simple thing, but it makes a difference on how I perceive the world when I take it away just from me and I see it in all of you. And I can feel a shift in how I see things. And one of the things I found about this are so many just little simple things that I can do to shift my perception. It's just a matter of learning to do them consistently, and my life gets better. I kind of ranted there a little bit. I didn't mean to. I just got on a roll. So
No, it's right on.
okay, back to the Holy Spirit's voice is as loud as your willingness to listen. Well, that's true. It cannot be louder without violating your freedom of choice, which the Holy Spirit seeks to restore, never to undermine. Well, I don't have anything different to say than what I just said a few minutes ago. I think this is a very meaningful section to me because it kind of encapsulates things I've been working on personally. So. Nothing else for me.
Well, my favorite line in here is the Holy Spirit's voice is as loud as your willingness to listen. And you know, when I'm in a state of turmoil, my prayer is, Holy Spirit, shout, get through to me, be loud. I won't hear a whisper right now. You know what I mean? It's like, I want to hear the voice of the Holy Spirit, and ego is very loud. So,
You know, that last sentence, there's a line in the Course that says, you turn to the Holy Spirit, or you think, well, Holy Spirit, just take this away from me. Like,
Yeah.
I don't need to do it. You just take it away. And
Yeah.
what the Course is saying is that then if that was the case, then you wouldn't learn that you really don't want separation.
Right.
And that's why we're going through this step by step in time. Each instant is
yeah,
an instant of separation from love. And when we see that
yeah,
and we realize I don't really want that, then it's healed in that
Right.
moment. So
Right.
we have to teach ourselves the obvious, that we don't want to be separate from love.
right. Yeah. Little by little, every day. Anything else in paragraph 8 that stands out for anyone?
To others, I found in my personal experience that when I ask Holy Spirit to take this, I actually feel a stirring in my heart center. I actually feel a presence. And when I get that, I just release it. Now, for me, I've learned that if I don't feel that stirring, that my ego is still in there. So it's
Yeah.
just something that works for me. I thought I'd pass it on.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
Dan.
You know, this is all about the feeling thing. One time I had, I don't know, echocardiogram or something. I don't know. It was about, my doctor thought she heard something in my heart, right? So I got to see this video. Now, I really tune into my heart center like you're talking about, Dale. Like, this is where I would recognize whether I'm shutting down or opening up to love. And I looked at that video, or whatever it was, you know, on the screen, I'm seeing something and it's like, that's not my heart. That's a pump. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's not the same thing. The body and how we perceive on the inside, we call it the heart, but it's something different.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Jan. It's not the physical manifestation. It's Holy Spirit. I don't know the word to describe it, but
Yeah.
it's real. I know it's real.
Yeah,
And
right, yeah.
when I feel that, I just, okay, it's yours. I'm going about my business.
Right. That's the best. You know, that by doing that, we connect ourselves with spirit. That's the main thing. We get the problem solved a lot faster than we would if we tried to do it ourselves.
That's right.
But that's not even the real point of it. The real point is we reached out to spirit and we found ourselves in communion with spirit.
Yeah.
And with each other.
Could you share just a moment, like you did the other day, that you listen to your body
Yeah.
to help you understand what's in your mind, but you make this transition that it's really my mind I'm listening to.
Yeah.
It comes through the body, but I'm really, how did you
Okay, you
explain
know
that?
what I'll do is I'll read paragraph 9 and explain that from that point of view.
Okay,
Okay. The Holy Spirit teaches you to use your body only to reach your brothers, so he can teach his message through you. So there's a place in the course, I don't know where it is, where it says, you know, the body is a means of communication. The body is an instrument. And the difference between the way the body is used and the way we think of it is, think of the body as like a telephone, okay? The telephone itself doesn't have any messages. It's a conduit, right? But it says the difference here is that the message is here, it goes through the conduit, and it comes back here. It's like you're talking to yourself.
as opposed to the ego uses that body stuff to define us,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Okay, so this will heal them. This will heal your brothers, and therefore heal you if we use our body just as a means of communication. Everything used in accordance with its function as the Holy Spirit sees it cannot be sick. Everything used otherwise is. Do not allow the body to be a mirror of a split mind. Okay, here's where I'm going to talk a little more. Do not allow the body to be a mirror of a split mind. Do not let it be an image of your own perception of littleness. Do not let it reflect your decision to attack. So the idea is that if you are willing to feel your feelings, knowing that they come from your mind and are projected onto the body like a mirror. So you see these images, mirror, image, reflection. The body is nothing but a reflection of the mind. You can use it in that way. You can say, oh, I feel tight. You know, I'm trembling. Well, that's a message that you're not thinking right. Right? I feel in here. I feel tightness in my shoulders. This is all body sensation. The body is not the authority. The body is the mirror
Of your mind,
the mirror of the mind.
right?
Right. So you can use it as a communication from your mind to your mind.
And to other minds,
Well, then when you clear out the crap,
yeah.
right, that's keeping you feeling, let's say, tense. Okay, I have a tension in my body. And I say, well, what am I thinking? What am I thinking? I'm thinking that I can't pay the bills. I'm thinking that I'm going to end up on the street. I'm thinking that this person is being mean to me by not paying me. All of those thoughts are attack thoughts. The attack is felt in my body. That's the sickness that this is talking about, right? But if I recognize it's nothing but a message from me to me through the ego, then I have used the body appropriately. I've used it to recognize that I am thinking with the ego. If I'm in pain, if I'm in sickness, as this section talks about, If I'm in any kind of sickness, even if it's just a little bit of tension, that's sickness. If I'm doing that, I'm listening to ego. Then say to yourself, I don't want my body to mirror a split mind. Well, you don't change the mirror, what's on the mirror, by changing the mirror. You do by changing the projector, right? The projector is your thoughts. So I don't want to see a split mind. I don't want to see littleness. And I don't want to see attack, my decision to attack. That's being reflected in my sick body. The way to change that is to change your mind. So wait, in chapter 21, it says, don't seek to change the world, seek to change your mind about the world. So don't seek to change your body, seek to change your mind, and your body will change. Now, we know that that doesn't mean don't use medicine.
Yeah.
We know that.
Yeah.
We're going to be using things here in the world, but that answers the question that you had asked
It
me
does.
about
And-
how I use it.
And when you use something like medicine, you're actually using the mind to invest that object with
With
a healing belief.
right. Everything is placebo, right? Joe Dispenza talks about that. Everything is placebo. You're not really doing anything except your mind is giving it power. And then accept that. That's how we're operating here.
And you know, when you said that, the part of do not let it be an image of your own perception of littleness, that brought me back to 6. Like
Paragraph 6.
paragraph 6, those first few sentences, it's a witness to your frailty. So
Yeah.
the ego is always going, you're frail, you're vulnerable, you know,
Yeah.
all of that stuff. It's just making you small.
Here's the advantage of using your body as a means of communication from your mind to your mind. It will stop you from projecting. It's like, let's say I'm feeling tension in my shoulders and a tightness in my throat. And I say, oh, I'm angry at Bill. I'm angry. Who's angry? Who's hurting? The thought here is causing this. I can change my thought and I can relax. And then I use one of the course's lessons usually. So, you know, God's will for me is perfect happiness, or I place the future in the hands of God, or some other thought that will relieve me from the belief that Bill did it to me. That's what the ego wants us to believe. Something outside of me hurt me. Something outside of me hurt my body, and that body is me. That's all ego baloney. Do you have any questions or thoughts about this so far?
That's the last paragraph.
Oh, I know, but I'm not done reading the last paragraph. Yeah. So anything I said sound like anything you want to dispute or add to? Okay.
It was well said.
Okay.
So I started tapping a couple weeks ago, and when they always say, where is the tension in your body? I could never tell. Oh, maybe it's in my neck or my skin goes crazy. I could never tell. And since I've been tapping, my heart is thumping all over the place, you know? And so next time it starts palpating, I'll say, you know, I'm projecting, and try to, just use like you said. So thank you very, very much. It's very timely for me.
Okay. So the tapping she's talking about is emotional freedom technique.
Yeah, emotional
And
freedom tapping.
It's another placebo, right? It's
Yeah,
like
it is.
I'm saying to myself, I don't want this pain. I don't want this emotional belief. I don't want this. I want peace, you know, like that. You're using something physical to reinforce the thought for yourself. And
Yeah.
that's all it is. And it's a good thing. It's not that the tapping is freeing you from whatever.
Oh, I just said that.
Yeah.
I was just saying the technique enabled me to feel finally.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's great.
So this is why, so what the course is always advocating is before the Holy Spirit can use the body or use the world in your relationships, you have to get to a neutral. My
Right,
body's neutral and the world is neutral. And then the Holy Spirit can use it,
right,
but not when it's a conflict between the ego and the Holy Spirit.
right,
That's why the third lesson we read in 6 was be vigilant only for God and his kingdom.
right.
And that's, as a, my other degree in philosophy was theater. And when they teach you to speak in theater or singing, what you have to do is make your body completely neutral, meaning not holding tension anywhere.
Mhm.
And when you make it neutral, then you can express these emotions. You can express these ideas.
In other words, spirit can move through your body.
Right, because
Okay.
I've made it neutral. I'm not jazzed with the ego. Yeah, I am talking about that.
Okay, so let's just finish up. Health is seen as the natural state of everything when interpretation is left to the Holy Spirit, who perceives no attack on anything. Health is a result of relinquishing all attempts to use the body lovelessly. Health is the beginning of the proper perspective on life. Health is the beginning of the proper perspective on life. We're expected to be healthy. It's natural. It's of our divine nature. Health is the beginning of the proper perspective on life under the guidance of the one teacher who knows what life is, being the voice for life itself. And life is capitalized there. God is life. Of course, says God is life.
And notice again that those last 3 sentences begin with the same phrase, health is,
Yeah.
and he uses repetition because of areas where we're particularly dense.
Dense.
It's just health is,
All right.
health is, health is.
Any thoughts to conclude? Well, thank you very much. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
I really appreciate all of your comments. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Bless you.